There it goes. So I'd like to introduce our first speakers. So we have Lizzie and Billy, who are, Lizzie's from the Norfolk Community Foundation, both are involved in the Nourishing Norfolk network. And so without further ado, I'd like to pass over to Lizzie and Billy to tell us a little bit more about the work they're doing.
Okay, hi everyone, I'm Lizzie and I'm a programs advisor at Norfolk Community Foundation. My job involves, so I'm just trying to share my screen. Is that shared?
Yeah, it's sharing now.
Oh, lovely. Okay, sorry. So my job involves supporting voluntary organisations in the county with potential funding opportunities, and another part of my role is carrying out the funding processes involved in supporting the members of the Nourishing Norfolk group. Hence why I'm here talking today. And as Amelia and Tasha said, Billy is also here, who has recently joined Norfolk Community Foundation as the Nourishing Norfolk Network Coordinator, and previous to this she was running one of the Nourishing Norfolk hubs for almost 2 years, so she can talk a bit more about practicalities of and the day-to-day of running a food hub. But I'm just going to do this presentation first, and then Billy can talk about the food hub day-to-day. So Nourishing Norfolk is a network of affordable community supermarkets which are funded and supported by Norfolk Community Foundation. Within the Nourishing Norfolk network, these shops are referred to as food hubs, but they can be a variety of different things. So they can be smaller pantry type things that are kind of in a church porch, for example, or they can be a larger social supermarket. For example, the Feed, and Andrew from the Feed is here today as well, or they can even be mobile food stores. I'd say the model that they're based on is dependent on the geography, potentially, the need in the area, and the demographic that the food hub is trying to support. What they all do is provide a source of affordable food for the community members. This obviously helps to reduce the pressure on household budgets and provides a dignified approach to food provision with a range and dignified approach to healthy choices of food, almost acting as an in-between between a food bank, and a normal supermarket. To join one of these hubs, one of these Nourishing Norfolk hubs, it's not means tested to become a member if you're in need, and they do offer varying levels of wraparound support, so that the members can overcome potential barriers and challenges. The aim of these hubs isn't to create a dependency on them, it's to understand that people's situations are complex and changing, and there is somewhere that can support that. So Nourishing Norfolk began as a response to the early stages of the pandemic. I don't know if you, I'm sure you all remember at the start of the pandemic, there was lots of emergency food response going on, and this was a response to that. The pilot project was the Burrell Shop, which is in Thetford at the Charles Burrell Centre, and this opened in November 2020 and is a very successful project for the Nourishing Norfolk network. And Billy, that was the hub that Billy ran, so she can talk a bit about that, like I've said. And since kind of the Nourishing Norfolk network began, we've received support from national partners such as Feeding Britain, and also local partners such as local government partners. And this is especially kind of happening, the support, as a result of the significant and ongoing increase in the cost of living, which is driving the need for this kind of network and groups like this. It's becoming much more needed now that there are more people being affected and might need this kind of support. So this is a little map of the Nourishing Norfolk hubs at the moment. So in the dark green, you've got who is open, and there's yellow and red for the potential hubs that might be opening. In the bright green, this is where the Breckland mobile food store, all the stops that it travels around in rural Breckland. And the blue at the top is where the coastal community supermarket ran by the Wells Community Hospital, that is the stops that is going on. So these food hubs are established by within NCF. It's identifying areas where we have an understanding that there is pockets of deprivation or poverty. Once identified, we then try and look for groups in those areas that kind of seem that they might be able to facilitate, so voluntary groups that might be able to facilitate running a food hub. And once these groups are identified, we work with them to establish what type of support would be needed. So often it's financial, but it can be other forms of support. What would be needed to make the food hub a reality? So as you can see on the map, there's currently ones in Thetford, Norwich, Great Yarmouth and Wales, and in rural Breckland. And we're looking to open food hubs in Sheringham, Downham Market, Earlham, and lots of other places, but Sheringham, Downham Market, Earlham are the ones we're looking that might be open quite soon, I'd say. So outcome. So far since Nourishing Norfolk the network began, so we are currently supporting over 4,300 households, and this totals over 12,000 people being supported through the being members of the households that are members of the hubs. So we currently have 10 hubs open, and we hope to have 5 more open by the end of the year, which is a fantastic landmark, really. I think it's quite exciting because when I wasn't at the foundation at the time, but when Nourishing Norfolk began, they spoke about phase 1 being that 15 hubs would be open, supporting 5,000 households. So as you can see, we're very close to kind of completing that phase 1 of Nourishing Norfolk, which is exciting. And as it also says, as an average, members are saving over 50% on their food shop, which also obviously means they can use their savings to support their households in different ways. Obviously, potentially utilities, just everything, you know. And my last slide is a bit on the distribution hub that is currently going on, because I think there might be a few questions about that. So the distribution hub is a recent development of Nourishing Norfolk, and it's still in its early stages. So the idea of this came about from understanding that one of the main challenges to the food hubs is ensuring that there is a regular and affordable supply of food. So we did notice that many of the members of the Nourishing Norfolk hub, a considerable amount of the people that ran it, their time was spent going back and forth, finding food, and they want to meet the demand of the members who are coming to them, and they want to give them a dignified choice and healthy choices, but that involved a lot of back and forth and struggling with the food provision. So this is working with partners such as the Royal Norfolk Agricultural Association and Norse. And like I said, we're in the process of setting up this operation so that a trial run can happen in the near future. Going forward, the intention is that the distribution hub will enable regular deliveries to the food hubs, and hopefully this will ease pressure and time constraints in stocking the food hub. That's for the people that run it. So they will be able to focus even more on supporting their members. That's all from me. I hope that was okay. I'm now going to pass over to Billy, who can talk a bit more about the day-to-day runnings of a food hub. I'll unshare my screen.
Brilliant. Thanks ever so much, Lizzie. It's really great overview of kind of NCF and the Nourishing Norfolk network, of which I'm now a part of. As Lizzie's already said, I've joined recently and came from the Charles Burrell Centre in Thetford, where we had the Burrell shop, which opened 2 years ago now. And it's been brilliant that so many other hubs have come online so that we can start to work together as a network and take advantage of offers that we might not have been able to as a single food hub. I know some people have already started asking some questions about the wraparound care, which I'll come on to shortly. The day-to-day running of the hub, opening hours are very different from hub to hub, and I think reflect the need within each individual's community. There's no right or wrong with that. As long as there is some provision, it's got to be a good thing. A lot of people worry that they're not open enough or at the wrong times, and I think if you're thinking about doing it, it's just something you've got to pick a couple of times and days that you think will work, go with it, and then see what actually the customer base needs from you. And if you can then tweak your opening hours to suit, that's great. The food, actually getting the food in, as Lizzie's already said, is a large part of what anyone involved with a food hub will be doing. The distribution hub, which Tori, our colleague, is setting up now, will definitely help to alleviate some of that. Ordering comes to sort of purchase the food in, comes from many different supply lines. Sometimes you'll also have your local connections to, for example, in Thetford, one of them was with Warburtons, who have a base locally, and they allowed us to go in twice a week and collect 40 items each time that we could then sell on at our very low cost. Sainsbury's locally had an orange collection bin at the front of the store so that their shoppers could pick up an extra couple of items, pay for them at the checkout and pop them in the orange box on the way out. There's all kinds of those local connections to allotment groups, farmers, all sorts of things like that, which are incredibly useful because particularly with fresh fruit and veg coming off of allotments and from our local farmers, it helps everyone in the hub to know that every one of the members that they have shopping have access to good quality, nutritious food that's also going to be available to them at a really great price, and sometimes for free as well with certain items. Lizzie's already mentioned about members signing up, and that's probably the only process that is very different to going into your Tesco's or your Lidl. You do have to be a member, and we always used to like to think at the Burrell shop that actually signing up as a member made you feel special in all the right ways. So there is that choice, there is that shopping with dignity, there was no means testing, just a few basic questions: name, address, how many people are you supporting in the household, who lives with you permanently, what kind of age groups are there. That helps us to know the sorts of things we might be needing to source to get in. If there's, if you really don't have a lot of children that are accessing your food hub, probably not going to need those kinds of children's cereals or packed lunchbox bits and pieces. But it also helps for the funders to understand who is being supported throughout the county. So not very intrusive, and done with dignity and care. And then once signed up, people can grab a shopping basket and wander around and pick the items that they would like to have. Pricing was always well below retail recommended that you would find in your local supermarket, and generally over a nice size shopping basket, most people were saving kind of 30 to 50, 55% on their shopping, sometimes more, sometimes a little bit less, but very good savings to be had each and every time the member came in to shop. what might feel like quite a small amount to some people of saving maybe £5–10 on a shop means the absolute world to that member household, because it could mean the difference literally for them of being able to then go and put £10 on their top-up card for their electric and pop the heating on. We always used to say to people visiting the Burrell shop that it was the food that enables people to cross the threshold without worry, without feeling shame. There's no stigma attached to wandering into what looks like a corner shop and buying some food. But very quickly, with the warm welcome, people got to trust us working in there and the volunteers working in there, and would then very quickly tell us the other areas in their lives that were causing them challenges and issues. And it was then we were able to signpost them to other forms of help, and that becomes the wraparound care that's offered. So we did that as much as we possibly could. Obviously, our primary was to get people in, get them access to the great quality, nutritious, low priced food. But we always had people coming in with envelopes because the literacy is not great. Could you just read this and make sure I'm not in trouble? When we had the census, a lot of folks weren't computer savvy, didn't have very good literacy. So we actually helped them get online with one of our laptops. We walked them through the process of the census, and they knew then that they'd done what they were supposed to do, the right thing, and there would be no comeback, no fines, and put their mind at rest, and was just a point of very friendly, easily accessible help. With funding from Feeding Britain, we managed to get Citizens Advice to come in one morning a week for between 6 and 12 months, which was brilliant to be able to do, because the guys that came from Citizens Advice then became friendly, trusted faces that were regularly seen around the centre. So when we said, you know, I can't talk, I would say, no, I'm not the expert in debt, but the lovely Becky from Citizens Advice is here this morning. Why don't you just pop and tell her what the issues are? She can probably help. And because they'd probably seen Becky in the cafe area, they were happy to then go and access her. It wasn't like making a cold call and having to explain your situation. It was just going to have a chat with a friendly face that you kind of already knew. That kind of wraparound care is invaluable because it's done within a place that the person already feels safe to be in and to enter. And sometimes picking up that phone to an organisation or a company that you haven't had dealings with before is really difficult to do. And sometimes it would actually be us taking 5 minutes out to go and make that initial contact call with somebody, with a company that somebody maybe owed some money to explain that the person was aware of the debt and they were phoning up that morning to try and make a repayment plan. And just being able to do that and make that initial contact for the person, with them standing right beside you to then hand the phone over. The phone calls were very much calmer, with much better outcomes. And it's just being able to provide that for people. Sometimes you'd like to give people much more time, but obviously it's not always possible. You just do what you can. So the wraparound care can extend to all sorts of things, including a hygiene bank, working with the Fuel Bank Foundation, knowing who your other providers are within your local community, toddler groups, other drop-in services, community lunches, anything like that.
Billy, I'm really sorry to interrupt you. We're actually running up over time. So would you mind just wrapping up quickly? So we've got a couple of other speakers. I really don't want to interrupt you because it's really interesting.
No, that's fine. Basically, if anyone is thinking that needs a food hub of some kind needs to be within their community, obviously get in touch with us at Norfolk Community Foundation. The difference you can make just by offering some food is immense. There are some things that you would need to think about, but we'd be very happy to guide you through that. And I think for everyone to not lose sight of the fact that the smallest things that we can do for the people within our community, although they feel small to us, actually make the absolute world of difference. But if anyone's got questions that we can't get around to today, feel free to contact myself, Lizzie, at Norfolk Community Foundation, and would be happy to have a chat individually.
Thank you, Billy. That's great. That's really useful, and I'm so sorry to interrupt you. We're just a bit of a tight schedule.
I can talk forever on that. So.
There's so
no
much
worries.
today. We are quite a big group today, so what I'd encourage you to do is, if you have any questions, comments, useful links, post them in the chat. What we'll do is we'll save the chat and turn it into a Q&A document afterwards that we can circulate. We might need the support of the speakers to answer some of the questions, but that way hopefully we'll sort of cover things that we can't cover today. So yeah, I'm going to move straight on to Andrea now, if Andrea is ready, and then hopefully we'll have a very short bit of time for some Q&As afterwards. But yeah, there's a lot to fit in today, so sorry to cut you short, but right, I'm gonna pass straight over to Andrea because I can see she's already screen sharing.
Bit eager there, yeah. Like all of us, I could talk all day long about food. So yeah, thank you for inviting me to be part of this, and yeah, really nice to hear from Billy and Lizzie, who've been really supportive of us at the feed. So today I'm just gonna start by talking a little bit about what the feed does, and then explore a little bit around some of we've got a few different food equality projects which we run, and the main one and the one which I work on is our social supermarket, so lots to say about that. So hopefully you can see my slides okay. I'm just going to jump right on in. So the feed is a social enterprise which aims to combat poverty, hunger and homelessness in Norwich. So all of our work is about using food to make a difference. We run cafes and a catering service, which help to fund our charitable work. So we kind of occupy quite an interesting space in Norwich in terms of both being commercial, but also on the charity and food support side of things. So anytime someone comes to one of our lovely cafes around the city or uses our catering for their events or business or, weddings, whatever it might be, that is helping to not only fund our food equality work, but also support. Sorry, the cat has decided to make a lot of noise in the background, so just yell if he gets annoying. Not only does that work kind of fund our charitable projects, but it also provides a place where people can take part in work experience, focused on being in a catering environment, being in a cafe environment, and being able to get that experience where people might have previously faced some barriers to. I'm gonna have to kick the cat out. I'm so sorry. Really. That's a first. Sorry, that's always the way. It's completely silent before that. So yeah, we provide work experience opportunities for people to help move into employment when they've previously faced barriers. We're increasingly working in food equality, so I'm going to talk a little bit about those elements of our work now. Primarily, we're a member of the Norwich Food Alliance, so we work with Norwich Food Bank, Food Hub, Food Cycle, and we're supported by Norwich City Council in developing the Food Equality Action Plan. So this is something that's been produced over the past 18 months or so, as a way for all Norwich food provision services to work together towards a shared vision. And we've recently revised that project, and we've just launched a new vision, which is that every Norwich resident can eat well, regardless of circumstance. So we're working together to focus food provision work in the city around 4 key areas, around things like improving access to services, being able to signpost people on to further support, reducing food waste, and also sharing best practice. So that is very much part of our work, is kind of working together to avoid duplication and work really intelligently. The Norwich Food Network is going to be developing a programme of meetings over the next year or so where we'll focus on each of these different themes. And that's one really strong recommendation I'd have, which is that if you're already involved in food provision, or if you're thinking of organising a food provision project, please get involved in that network and be part of that vision, so that we're all kind of working towards a cohesive goal. So within the feed's own food provision work, we we run a couple of different services, and one of those is an evening meal service called Nourish. It's a sit-down dinner service where you can come and enjoy a hot meal indoors 6 days a week. So we run that as part of the Pathways partnership of homelessness organisations, and that service was created following an evaluation we did into existing services in the city. So we spoke to lots of people using those services and spoke to people around the area. And some of our recommendations, well, all our recommendations focused on things like providing people with an indoor space to come to get food, so that you're not kind of facing the elements, but also because that provides a much more manageable space. So it means that, you know, we're able to manage the referrals into that project rather than it being a kind of larger meal for quite a large group of people. We see about 15 to 20 people each night at Nourish, and those are all people who've been referred. So it's specifically for people who are rough sleeping or in accommodation without any cooking facilities. I know that some of the hostels do have cooking facilities, so we have other support available for them. But if you would like to refer anyone that you're working with, please do contact Gemma, who's on the left there, who leads the project. One of the other recommendations within that report that we produced was to have a team of volunteers who are fully trained. So our team of about 25 brilliant volunteers are all trained in things like safeguarding, food hygiene, professional boundaries, and kind of all the things that need to be in place to have a really high standard of food provision for that kind of support. So on to our social supermarket. The background to our social supermarket is that we, from the middle of the first lockdown, started running a community fridge at our Prince of Wales Road cafe. So as a response to the pandemic, and also recognising that there was quite a lot of food surplus, food waste around the city, we chose to repurpose that and be able to give it out to the local community so that people weren't going without. Across those 2 years, we would give away about 26 tonnes of food each year, and we saw kind of about 100 people each week come and use that service. But we were kind of vying for space against our catering team and our cafe team because we were using that existing site. So when the opportunity to create a social supermarket came up as a tender opportunity with Norwich City Council, we jumped at the chance. We were obviously successful in that tender and really excited about the prospect of providing people with a really dignified, welcoming way to access food support. So being able to offer people really affordable groceries, but also to offer a much wider range of support. So where the community fridge saw people kind of having to choose their weekly food options from quite a limited availability of food waste, what we're now able to do is offer people a whole range of fresh, chilled, frozen food, tins, pasta, cereal, household and toiletry products as well. So kind of we really aim that you could access your, you know, a small but full weekly shop through our little shop. So our social supermarket is based on Hall Road in Lakenham, which is one of the reducing inequalities target areas. We are kind of within a community which has been identified as somewhere where financial support could boost that community. As Lizzie and Billy have said, it's all about kind of giving people dignity and choice and availability. So where our community fridge used to run 3 afternoons a week for 2 hours at a time, very much through the support of our volunteers, we're now open 5 days a week. So most days we're 10 till 3, and on a Thursday we're 12 till 6, so that people can come along a little bit later in the day after the usual working day. And we have a team of about 30 volunteers helping us on this project now, and 2 full-time staff members, one of whom was recruited from being a service user and then became a volunteer and is now our assistant manager. So we're very keen that we kind of recruit from the local community and from service users. We still provide a community fridge, so we're still able to repurpose food waste, and we run a hygiene bank where anyone can take away period products, and toiletries completely free and no questions asked. Alongside the kind of day-to-day support, we offer, as mentioned already, the wraparound support. So things like, drop-ins with partners like Norfolk Community Law Service. We're soon to have drop-ins with Citizens Advice, and we have shelter as well. So when people are facing issues, whether that's kind of crisis or kind of ongoing things, we're able to make that direct link with services which can kind of elevate people out of those challenges. When we set the social supermarket up, we kind of learned from existing social supermarkets, and we made an estimate that within our first year we would have 200 members. We thought within our first month we'd have about 50. In our first month of trading, we had 800 members, and throughout our time running the social supermarket, we've seen about 500 visits every week. This is the map of people just within Norwich who've applied to use the social supermarket. We're now at 1,600 members, which is way beyond anything we'd ever expected. So it's been a massive learning curve, and really quite shocking, to be honest. So you'll see in the slide above, I mentioned that we are just for residents of NR1, NR2 and NR4. That was a restriction we had to put in place following launching because of this huge demand that we saw from all over the city. But now that we're part of the Nourish, well, we've always been a part of Nourishing Norfolk, but now that there's an increasing number of social supermarkets around the area, we're able to kind of direct people to their closest support so that everyone can shop in the way that we would all want to, which is having things close by, convenient and easily accessible from home. As I say, the numbers have just been shocking really from the start. So, 1,600 members, that's about 3,500 people within all those households signed up. So when people sign up to use the shop, they complete a short membership questionnaire, in which we found that 39% of applicants have a disability, 41% of applicants are in social housing. And I think the saddest one of all is that, there's two really sad ones actually. One is that 38% of our applicants only have fruit and vegetables once or twice a month. 7% of them said they never have fruit, vegetables or non-processed foods. And another 38% of our applicants told us that they rarely feel their lives are filled with things that interest them. So we know that actually food equality and food inequality is about much more than food. It's, if you're struggling to access food, then there's a lot of other things going on, which is where that wraparound support really comes in. The stories that we hear on a daily basis continue to shock us. It's not unusual to hear a budget of £5 a week for groceries. So the fact that a weekly shop with us comes out at 26% of a regular supermarket shop, when you take into account all of the free things we offer, we know that it really is providing a lot of support for people who are in huge need. But at the same time, it's also about providing people with support when they're not in that crisis. So it's about prevention and making sure that people who are on a range of different incomes or situations are able to access support, and it's not just about crisis provision. I wanted to end on a bit more of a positive note, because it has been, it can be harrowing and it can be tough to hear the stories that people are experiencing. So I really just wanted to celebrate the fact that we are there to support people, and that's thanks to volunteers like Nisreen, who's in the middle there. Some of the support we've been able to offer has obviously been beyond food, so things like electric blankets for social supermarket members like June on the right there, who had that thanks to funding from Norfolk Community Foundation. And really just to celebrate the fact that this is very much a community project. So we've just recently launched our community cafe, and already we've had an amazing number of suggestions from our volunteers and from our members about how that can really be a community space. So where we're being told that people are, 38% of our members do rarely feel that their daily life is filled with things that interest them, we really want our social supermarket to be somewhere that changes that with people, and kind of gives them the skills and the confidence to make those changes within their own lives. So that's me. Thank you. I will hand back to Amelia now.